Greetings, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining today's webinar. Today, we are going to be discussing how you can unlock wireless efficiency with our brand new ANX4 scalable wireless receiver. But before we get into that, there's just a few items of housekeeping. First of all, this session is being recorded, as all our webinars are, and it will be available for on-demand viewing at shure.com/webinars. It'll take us about a week or so to get it up there, but once it is available, we will email all of you registrants that it is there. So once again, shure.com/webinars for the recording. It will be available in about a week or so. Second of all, as we go through the session today, if you have any questions, please feel free to type those into the Q&A section. Just a quick side note, there are two ways that we can interact here on this Teams webinar. The first is the chat, and the second is the Q&A. Please keep your questions in the Q&A section. If you type them in the chat, we will most likely miss them. So type in any questions you have in Q&A, and we will get to as many of those as we have time for at the end of the session. So speaking of today's session, here's what we're going to learn. We're going to start with an overview of the ANX4. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the ShureCloud activations and licensing. Then we'll be discussing the configuration and deployment of the ANX4. And then we're going to get into that Q&A. And we have some fantastic people here that are going to be helping us along the way. We are joined by Paul, MJ, and Rod, and they're going to be giving us all of this great information. So without further ado, I am going to bring Paul on the screen, and we are going to get this kicked off. So give me just a second here. And there you go. And take it away, Paul.
Thank you very much. And welcome, everyone. And thanks for joining us today. If you aren't already familiar with the ANX4, we wanted to do just a quick overview of the product and really kind of talk about why you should care about this. As a touring audio engineer myself, I've had the wonderful pleasure of building numerous racks of wireless microphone and PSM systems and trying to get everything in the best order, and the cable management in the rear of the system, networking multiple devices together, running multiple channel snakes, from the rack to the consoles, input or splitter. And as fun and challenging as all of that can be for us, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to do any of that? Wouldn't it be nice if we could just drop in a single rack device, run power and a Cat5 cable, and be done with it? And that's really the problem that the ANX4 helps to resolve, are those multi-system rack configurations, setups, and just the issues that go into that. So, this is a scalable wireless receiver that uses either Axient Digital, which you can get up to 16 channels, or ULX-D transmitters that you can get up to 24 channels. And so this device has two pairs of antenna RF inputs in the back. There's no cascade port, you'll notice, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. It has the 4-port PoE switch on there, which gives you Shure Dante Shure control with Wireless Workbench and other third-party systems, and then provides you with your digital outputs and your Dante AES67 for that. And then we have different AC and DC power options, and then you've got that large front panel color display where you can really see everything and control everything from that. And then going into the features of this, the ANX4 delivers all of the same features that you're already familiar with Axient Digital and ULX-D receivers. So when you select either of those transmission modes, you're going to be able to access all of those systems features within the ANX4. So with Axient Digital, you'll have access to features like transmitter linking and show link and quadversity, and the true digital diversity, the frequency detection with the ADX transmitters, and then in either of the Axient Digital or ULX-D modes, you get interference management and high density mode and encryption. So you're just able to access all of those same features. You're really not missing out on anything in that at all, being able to do that. So, whether it's an install, whether you're building for truck packs or you're doing fly dates, right? Space is always a premium that we have to wrestle with. And so then sometimes you just need, hey, I need one more rack space or two more rack spaces for another piece of gear. And then you're caught in a situation where you're rebuilding a rack for more space, or maybe needing to reduce a rack for portability, and that can be a time-consuming headache to have to do that. And so that's where the ANX4 kind of maximizes on its system efficiency. It go to the next slide on that. And so it just significantly reduces our weight and space requirements. It frees up so much space. So, for an Axient Digital system, to get 16 channels, you'd need 4 quads plus another rack space for a distribution system. And so you're able to minimize all of that down to 1 rack space and a fraction of the weight. And then with ULX-D, it's even more because you've got 24 channels. So that's 6 quad receivers that you're consolidating down on. And so now you don't need that separate antenna distribution. You don't need, you don't need network switching. You don't need a large rack or all those multi-channel audio snakes. And even with ULX-D, you get the added benefit of having, Dante browse and headphone jack monitoring and being able to do, split band configurations. So let's take a look at the bigger picture and just consider for a moment with this last slide as we lead into the next part. And that's, you're taking let's take a 10U rack, for example, if you were going to have 16 channels of Axient Digital and 8 channels of PSM 1000, you can achieve that same channel count now in just a 2U rack space using an ANX4 with an 80 PSM, quad transmitter with channel licenses, right? Depending on what your RF power requirements may be for your system, if you're able to add more licenses for that. But this is the kind of solution that we're providing is that it's all scalable, right? Maybe you don't need 16 or 24 channels right out of the gate, but you want to be able to have, 10 to 12 channels of a system. But now you need to be able to add more channels to a rack. Instead of having to add more devices to that, you can now just add more channel licenses to unlock those additional channels for that. And so that's now where we lead into our conversation, if we can bring on Rod. And so Rod works with our ShureCloud team, and we wanted to bring him on here and just give him a chance to talk through kind of that channel licensing, because these are the two of the bigger features. One of the big features differences with the ANX4 over other systems that we have is its need for and reliance on channel licensing. So we want to talk about that a little bit and provide that. So Rod, take it away.
So yeah, thanks, Paul. Hey everybody, and yeah, as you may know, that out of the box, the ANX4 will arrive with no channels set up. Setting up channels on your ANX4 is done using ShureCloud. So you need to have a ShureCloud account so that you can register your ANX4. To set up a ShureCloud account, head over to cloud.shure.com and click sign up. To register or claim your ANX4 device, you'll need to provide the serial number and the MAC address. Alternatively, or to claim multiple devices at the same time, you can scan the local network, or you can import a text file containing MAC addresses and serial numbers. Once an ANX4 is claimed, it can be managed and monitored using ShureCloud License Management and ShureCloud Device Management. So moving to the next slide, once the ANX4 is claimed, you will want to set up channels by applying the licenses you purchased through your Shure partner. One license entitlement buys you 1 channel of either ULX-D or of Axient Digital. As you know, ANX4 can be assigned up to 24 channels of ULX-D or 16 channels of Axient. If you need to purchase licenses in a hurry or you can't contact your Shure partner, it's also possible to purchase the licenses directly. Go to shure.com/ANX4 and click the Purchase ANX4 Perpetual Licenses button. It's a great big blue button. The license claim code will be emailed to you, whichever path you use, whether you go through your Shure partner or shure.com. And you can then enter that claim code into ShureCloud to claim your licenses. Once you've claimed your licenses, you now need to assign them to your ANX4. So select the ANX4 device you want to assign the channels to, select the number of channels from the drop-down box and click Activate. Your ANX4 unit will reboot and the channels will be set up. The same process can be used to reduce or increase the number of channels on the device, while unassigned licenses remain in your account, ready to be assigned to other ANX4s. Licenses can also be grouped into license groups as a way of organizing your licenses. So if we move to the next slide, it's possible also to transfer licenses between accounts. This might happen when you're renting a unit or when licenses get resold. The account sending the licenses, so the from account, if you like, places the licenses to be transferred into a new license group, then provides the details of the account they're transferring the licenses to, the to account, and a claim code will be issued and emailed to the to account. At any time before the to account claims the licenses, the from account can cancel the transfer. Next slide, please. The to account then uses that same claim code, so the claim code that they've been emailed, and this is exactly the same as when you first claimed your licenses on Shure. You use that claim code and you've now taken ownership of those licenses. So following the purchase of your ANX4 and its licenses, licenses can be applied to or removed from the device to enable or disable channels, can be moved between devices, and also moved between owners. We do have training videos on YouTube that cover this in great detail. I'll drop a link to them in the chat. So thank you. And now I'll hand over to MJ, the product manager for ANX4, and he's going to discuss device configuration.
Thank you all for your time today. I'm really excited to be talking about the ANX4 with all of you all over the world. I am the product manager for ANX4, and I'm going to be walking you through some scenarios in which you might see yourself configuring an ANX4 depending on the different tuning ranges and set of antenna inputs that you might need. What I wanted to show you first here is our antenna configuration menu. So the antenna configuration menu is sort of the first place you go when you initially set up an ANX4. And if you notice there, and as described by Paul at the beginning, the ANX4 has two sets of antenna inputs. So 4 antenna inputs total, which are 2 diversity pairs. We'll also work in quadversity mode as well. So the first scenario that I have up at the top, which is a US-centric example, but I'm sure there are examples all over the world you could think of and apply to your applications. But here in the US, we have the UHF band, which operates from 470 to roughly 608. And we also have the STL band, which is a special band that many of our customers have a license to operate in, which is up in the 900 megahertz range. So ANX4 can be configured to have each pair of antennas support 2 different ranges, up to 72 megahertz wide. Or it can be set to quadversity mode, where all 4 inputs are set to 72 megahertz wide in total. So think of this box as having a input range of up to 144 megahertz, because each pair of inputs can cover up to 270 megahertz. Down there at the bottom, you'll see an example of us covering a contiguous UHF range in the US, or at least that middle example there. That covers 470 to 608, essentially, between those 2 pairs. And if you notice a little note at the middle, it describes that you can actually do quadversity during over that small overlapping range, 536 to 542. But in a true quadversity deployment, you would set the 2 antenna pairs to identical ranges up to 72 megahertz wide. And so that's how you would set up a conventional diversity and quadversity pair. The note at the bottom shows you a channel menu, and specifically the next step, which is assigning the RF band to each channel. So if you notice here in this example, we have channel 3, and the RF band is set to G57, and the antennas are set to AB. If we wanted channel 3 to be a receive channel that can support the X55 band, then this would be the menu where you would change that, and the corresponding antenna would change from AB to CD as well. So those are some kind of baseline views on how to set up the antenna configuration and RF band settings in the ANX4. And if we go to the next slide here, you'll see some examples that I put together. Again, in many parts of the world, VHF and UHF are available. And so here's an example of you setting your A and B pair to cover VHF and CD to cover UHF. That second example I talked about, where you could set a contiguous range of UHF, and that would cover a quadversity range. The bottom example is that STL and UHF range. But the most important thing to note here is that if you have a ULX-D or Axient Digital transmitter in your hand anywhere in the world, it will work with ANX4. It's just a matter of tuning the RF band to the frequency range. So for example, if these products are in Axient Digital mode, the available bands that you can assign will be every single Axient Digital band. And likewise in ULX-D, with one exception being our ISM band, which was a band we still sell in the US. It's not supported by ANX4, but every other band is. So rest assured that if you are an owner of ULX-D and Axient Digital, or Axient Digital, I should say, the ANX4 fits right into your workflow. It immediately works with all those existing transmitters. So next slide, just some examples on those antenna ports in the back and how you might configure these antennas. And a little preface I'd like to add before I get into this, there are many different ways that you can configure the ANX4. These are just some simple examples that I'll share, and I'll sort of touch on some more sophisticated examples at the end. But because you have these two pair of antenna inputs, think of it almost like you have two receivers. And how would you combine or distribute, I should say, the antennas of two receivers? Here's one example where we have the first pair of inputs on VHF and the second pair of inputs on UHF. You put UHF antennas on AB and UHF antennas on C and D. So that's a pretty straightforward example. In the next example here, what if you want to do contiguous UHF? One very simple and easy way to do that is by using a passive 2-to-1 splitter like our UA221. You would basically specify it as configured where A and C go to one pair of antennas and B and D go to the other pair of antennas via that splitter. Yes, you take a 3 dB loss, but also, yes, there's a lot of gain in a UA874, and this is a way to get away with a really simple deployment without a distro. If you calculate that you can get away with the loss of a 2-to-1, which in most cases you can, because not only does the 874 have some inherent passive gain because of its form factor being an LPDA, it also has active gain as well. It has an amplifier, offers 12 dB a gain. Chances are you're going to be able to more than make up for that available signal loss from using those passive splitters. So that's the second option. Third one that we are going to show is contiguous UHF using quadversity mode. So here we would have a set of 72 megahertz covered, and all four antennas would work in that quadversity realm. So here the entire range is 470 to 608, but the quadversity overlap is 470 to 542. So you'd be able to use quadversity on those channels and diversity on any other channel. And as you can imagine, there are so many other configurations that you could set this product up. We just thought we would put together some simple examples to sort of get your juices flowing onto what the capabilities actually are. So last slide, I think, or we're getting close on antenna deployments. So this is an example of using the UHF and a 900 megahertz band. In this case, in the UHF, in the US, it's the STL band. Here we're using wideband passive antennas. Our UA860 SWB, which can operate from 470 all the way to 1 gigahertz. So perfect antenna choice for using a combination of these two bands. And again, we're using that passive splitter, but instead of using an 874, we're using an omnidirectional antenna, which you may want to use for other reasons other than the bandwidth. You may also want to use those antennas because of the coverage that you are choosing. So another option for an antenna deployment when using UHF and STL. So a couple examples that we wanted to share with you. The first one being what a standalone deployment looks like. And I think we showed that in a lot of the examples that we demonstrated. It's very easy to get up to 16 channels or up to 24 channels, literally in one RU with no need for a distro, using some of the methods that we just described. But what if you want to use an 8600 Shure's digital spectrum manager with a 8610 because you're using ShowLink? Or what if you're using an antenna distribution system, perhaps in a larger network with other wireless systems? So we have a diagram here next that I can share with you that sort of outlines those scenarios. So here we have a scenario where, okay, I'm using an ANX4 and I'm also using an AD600. In this scenario, we would be hanging the 8600 off of a pair of those 845 outputs the same way the ANX4 is. So for example, you might put the 8600 on 1 and 2, and then put the ANX4s on 3 and 4 relative to A and B each, right? Keeping them split between A and B. And this affords you the option of using the 8600 in a way that eliminates passive distribution. I generally don't recommend using a UA221 when you're using an 8600 because you want the 8600 to see the same signal that your receiver is seeing. And in the case of using a UA221, as I mentioned, there's a 3 dB loss. So either the receiver or the 8600 is seeing a 3 dB loss. They're not actually seeing the same noise floor relative to each other. And that's why I recommend, and Shure recommends, quite frankly, using a distro in those use cases. And you can imagine a scenario here because there are open inputs there, right? I could add another ANX4 into that distro. Now I've just added another 24 channels, and I could add a third ANX4 even to have another 24 channels. At some point, there will be limitations into how much power you can put into a UA845, but generally speaking, this gives you the power to combine antennas and distribute to so many different receivers, and as a byproduct of that, getting so many channels online in such a small rack space. So that is an example of how to use a distro.
Okay, so I think, is it time for questions, everybody? I'm going to bring back my panelists and get our cameras large and in charge so you can see our faces. And we're going to dive in because we've got quite a few good questions here. All right, first question. Can you update your AD transmitter with the ANX4? So firmware updates.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate that question because that is something that does come up a lot. The receiver can store either image, an Axient Digital image or a ULX-D image, and you would download that image in Shure Update utility. So the receiver can't keep a transmitter image for both AD and ULX-D. You would choose one or the other. So for example, if you are a ULX-D user, when you download the ANX4 receiver firmware, you would also download the ULX-D transmitter firmware. And then that transmitter firmware is hosted in the receiver and it can update your transmitters at will. But let's say tomorrow you find yourself in need of updating an AD transmitter. You would take that ANX4, put it back on SUU, remove the transmitter image for ULX-D and replace it with Axient Digital. Moving the transmitter images takes seconds. They're not big files, so you can do that quite quickly.
Okay, great. Next question here. Why is there no true digital diversity in ULX-D mode?
Yeah, another good question. So it's a topic that's going to come up because inherently the ANX4 can do true diversity, right? We say that it does it on Axient Digital. So it's reasonable to think and maybe even assume that diversity would work on ULX-D, but it doesn't because it works using the same codec and same modulation scheme that all of the other Axient Digital's receivers use. So it's a way for us to keep the product cross-compatible between the native ULX-D receivers and the new ANX4 as well. So it would be a breaking compatibility to do such a thing. Also, there are so many inherent benefits of using ANX4 in ULX-D mode, even without the ability of having true diversity, the ability to filter, the ability to use different tuning ranges, the ability that you can use 24 of them in one RU. So ULX-D is going to remain to be the workhorse product that we recommend for applications like install and small club and band applications. But when you're talking about an application where you really need diversity, that's where Shure is going to always recommend Axient Digital. It was designed literally for the applications where you need true diversity the most.
Okay, great. Question for Rod here. Who is it that registers and claims licenses? Is it the installer or the client?
Both. So you have that option. So if you have a systems integrator and you want them to configure the system for you, then they can purchase those licenses on their own behalf. They claim those licenses, they configure the device, and then they would transfer ownership to the end customer once the project's done. However, if that's not your scenario, and if the SI or the Shure partner purchases on behalf of a customer that wants to configure it themselves, they can tell us that during the purchase process. That end customer then gets the claim code and they can configure the device themselves. So both are possible.
Okay. Next question. How does the 82 RPM 650 transmitter work with the partition of Dante outputs in regard to the maximum amount of Dante outputs that the Shure ANX4 multi-receiver can handle?
Yeah, so I can take that. Or I don't know, Paul, I saw you nodding your head, maybe if you want to, just so I'm not answering all the questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. So in Axient Digital, so it's, we talk about 16 channels and 24 channels between Axient Digital and ULX-D. The system actually is a 32-channel Dante device, so it has 32 channels. So when the Axient Digital mode, then you have 16 channels that are devoted to the Axient Digital transmitters. Then you have another 16 channels that then can be used and routed for talkback options. So when you're using a talkback switch with the ADX, two transmitters, or doing a modification on an AD2, then you can set up that talkback. So it's already configured in a default scenario where on channel 1, audio is going out the Dante 1, and then it's going out a Dante 17. And then it correlates from there all the way up to 1632. So that's how that is set up. And there's that option when you put it in Axient Digital transmission mode, there's an option there in the menus where you can go in and configure that talkback and determine which channel you want that to go out on.
Yeah, right on, Paul. And I'll just add, for those that don't know, the RPM 650 is a modification you can add to the 82 transmitter. The 82 transmitter doesn't inherently have a talk switch, but underneath its bezel, it has a little membrane switch. And with a part that you can purchase from Shure, you can modify your own transmitter to have a built-in talk switch button. And that's what the RPM 650 does. But Paul's right on. That application works with every different talk switch, not just the RPM 650. So it's actually the reason why we bought the extra channels from Dante, so we can do the talk switch option.
Okay, great. Next question. Are the tuning bandpass steps fixed or infinitely variable?
I'll answer that question in two ways. So in terms of like manually tuning a frequency, it works the same way as ULX-D and Axient Digital does, where we tune in the same 25 kilohertz steps. In terms of tuning the bandwidth of the antenna configuration menu, like your A, B, and CD ports, those are configurable anywhere between 174 and 2 gigahertz, provided that the maximum bandwidth is 72 megahertz wide. So you can put them anywhere between 174 and 2 gigahertz as long as they're 72 megahertz wide. I hope that answers the question. I answered how to tune a single channel and also how to tune the antenna menu because I wasn't quite sure what the question was in reference to.
Okay, thanks, MJ. Next question, can you confirm that licenses are the same for Axient Digital or ULX-D channels? Therefore, can a channel license used for ULX-D be removed and then set up for Axient Digital after changing the mode of the ANX4?
Yes. There is no such thing as an Axient Digital channel, a license or a ULX-D license. They are the same thing. So yeah, you could remove it, reconfigure the unit, stick it back on, and now it's in the other mode.
Fantastic. All right. I've got a couple of questions here asking about sharing the presentation. We don't typically share slides, but as I mentioned, the video will be available for on-demand viewing in about a week or so. Is the wide range of the antenna only 72 megahertz? I think you maybe touched on that.
Yeah, each pair of antennas is up to 72 megahertz wide. So that's why I said think of like the operating bandwidth of the hardware being up to 144 megahertz wide, anywhere from 174 to 2 gigahertz.
Okay. Do you always need a splitter to share antennas from A, B to CD? Isn't it possible to assign all channels to A, B instead when using only 2 antennas?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. There will be many applications, and we probably should have had a 2 antenna diagram in there. So good call out, actually, to the person who asked that question. You could easily, and that's going to be a very common use case, to just run a bunch of channels up to like, let's say 24 ULX-D channels with just a pair of antennas on AB. You totally could do that. That's probably the most common use case, actually.
Fantastic. Can the ANX4 also work with QLX-D line transmitters?
Yes and no. So it will not sync with an ANX4 receiver. But if you were to manually tune a ULX-D transmitter to the same frequency as an ANX4, when it's in ULX-D mode, it would work. But there are lots of caveats. Like, for example, it won't work if you're using encryption because we pass the encryption key over IR. That's why I say yes or no.
All right. In choosing AD versus ULX-D for a corporate environment, ANX4 seems to allow for flexibility to use one or the other, but some of the attractive features like frequency diversity or frequency detection and avoidance are not available in the ULX-D mode, correct?
That is correct. So if you are using an AD600 with an ANX4 that's in ULX-D mode, it interacts with the ANX4 the kind of the same way it would with a ULX-D receiver. So it'll send a new frequency all the way down to the receiver, but then that transmitter is going to need that frequency change too. And since the transmitters don't work with Shure's access points, you'll have to manually change the transmitter at that point. So it's really more of a byproduct of the transmitter, if you think about it, than the ANX4's inherent capabilities.
Okay. I know we can't really answer this one. Any speculation on transmitters moving into a band shifting option to help manage transmitter inventory?
Well, good news. We just launched the ULX-D wideband at Infocom this year. So we now have extremely wideband ULX-D transmitters that in most cases sort of match the tuning ranges of the Axient Digital transmitters. So think of us kind of stepping up our game in the mid-tier market with ULX-D by adding all of those wideband transmitters. So that is the situation that we're in right now. Of course, everyone's aware of global regulations, and we would just love to ship one transmitter to every country in the world.
No such luck there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's mostly due to regulations regarding RF frequency.
Okay. Should the ANX4 need to be replaced, is the license install to the new unit easy?
Yes, using ShureCloud, you can reset the device, which will remove all the licenses from the device, and then you can go through that, filling in the form that allows you to transfer licenses to the new owner.
Do the licenses cost money?
Yes,
they do.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that really quickly. You can go online and you can look at what the MAP price of an ANX4 is, and then you can look at what the MAP price is of the single and 4-channel licenses. Since this is a global audience, I don't want to quote prices. Prices are slightly different in different markets, but you could go to your local dealer or go online in your region, and you can see what the single and 4-channel price is and what the ANX4 price is. And what I'll tell you is that when you get into a large channel count configuration, like let's say a 16-channel Axient Digital configuration, or let's say even a 20-channel ULX-D configuration, the discount relative to buying ULX-D hardware is shocking. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars in some cases, several thousands of dollars in many. So, it's not for everyone. Obviously, some people are going to want 4 channels here, 4 channels there for breakout rooms and things like that. Of course, rental companies will continue to want a mix. But I think for those that are typically running high channel count applications, you'll find when you look at our pricing that the higher you go channel count, the more money you save. And that was the idea behind the pricing.
That's a nice change of pace now, isn't it? All right.
I think so. And yeah, there's a stigma, right? We realize behind channel licenses and licensing hardware. And but the end result is that we provide a flexible experience to our customer. They can actually add to the product as their budget grows. You don't necessarily have to invest in a 24 channel rig. You can buy the box in like 8 or 12 channels, and then you could add licenses as sort of like fungible assets later, and you don't have to worry about, oh, now I need a new rack space. It's like just put them in the device you already own. Oh, I need a distro because I just added another piece of hardware. No, you don't. Just put them in the receiver. So again, not for everyone. That's why we didn't discontinue the ULX-D and AD receivers, but it's just another option for people that use large channel counts.
Another tool in the toolbox.
Exactly.
All right. Next question. Are licensed frequencies easy to update on a daily or weekly basis to mitigate challenging RF conditions?
You want to take that one, Paul? I think that was an RF question.
Yeah. So our license, I'm trying to understand exactly. So, I mean, yeah, you can adjust. If I'm understanding the question right, you can move to whatever transmitter you might have. So depending on your area, if you're moving from one city to another, right, different options are going to be available. That's why you can move the antenna configuration in that 72 megahertz range to whatever channels or spaces available, in those different areas that you're in, or changing between, the transmitters that you have. Maybe you're working in ULX-D and you have G50. And then another company, might have H50 or G50A, and so you can swap between those easily just by going in and changing the antenna configuration and saying, hey, I need this AB band RF inputs in G50, or I need it in H50 or whatever, or you can split it up. So you can update the frequencies on that however you need to. Depending on your environment and transmitters, on the transmitters that you have available to you.
Absolutely. And just in case, because we say our license frequencies, just in case you're referring to the actual licenses themselves, I think that's where Rod was going to jump in. And if you can, you were going to talk about the transferring of licenses. So I think that's important to touch on as well.
Exactly that. I mean, in order to move licenses to and from a device, that device needs to be on the internet, and that's it. So long as you're connected to your router, yes, it's a case of. I mean, the slide is there if you want to refer back to it, but it's literally a drop down. Select the number, and you go 16. And okay, tomorrow I only need 8. All right, 8, and you click activate, reboot. And off it goes. I think that was slide. Where are we? Yeah, slide 15.
Got it. Hold on 1 second.
And I'll just say that's such an easy process, going in and making those changes in ShureCloud and changing the channel counts on those. It's a super easy process. Like Rod said, it reboots the system, and then you just magically I won't say magically, there's a definite process, but the device reboots, and now you go from 16 channels to 20 channels or 24 channels, or however it is that you've adjusted it. But you don't have to, Rod, clarify if I'm correctly, like if you have 24 licenses on the device, because sometimes you're in ULX-D mode. When you switch over you don't have to change licenses as you switch between AD and ULX-D. You can just leave the 24 licenses on that device, and then when you change transmission modes, then I mean, if the channel counts just change, right?
Yeah, if you've got your 24 ULX-D channels and you now change to Axient, you'll have 24 licenses on the box, but obviously you'll only have 16 channels because it's Axient Digital. But yes, in that on the bottom right hand side, you can see that you just there's a drop down and you select the number of channels, and hit reboot or hit activate. Box reboots, off you go. Nice and simple. What I would also point out is that we do have built into ShureCloud is a system of RBAC, role-based access control. So you can allow certain members of your team to manage the licenses, and you can disallow others if you need them simply to monitor the device or to perform other roles. So obviously, you don't want somebody during a live gig reconfiguring the wrong ANX4 device because it happens to be attached to the internet. That can all be managed by assigning the correct roles to correct members of your team. You can also create sub-organizations within your team and have some devices belonging to one and some devices belonging to the other. They would be invisible across that organizational barrier. So again, you can group things and keep them safe.
Right. Wow. Great little discussion there. Next question. Are there any plans to make the ANX4 capable of hosting both Axient and ULX-D channels at the same time? Or is that a physical hardware limitation that it cannot be added as a feature through future firmware updates?
Well, never say never, but it's not a capability that we are talking about currently supporting. So I don't want to make a statement about the inherent capability of what the product can do, because we do like to surprise people with new updates. But at the same time, I will make no confirmation about Shure ever supporting ANX4 with AD and ULX-D at the same time.
I'll give the old disclaimer from my PR days. As a private company, we do not discuss our future product roadmap, but rest assured we are always working behind the scenes to improve and expand our product lines.
Yeah, but what I will say in all seriousness is it's a good question because it highlights an important need that we definitely recognize, is like the power of ANX4 only gets stronger if you can use a ULX-D and Axient Digital at the same time. We definitely get that and appreciate the sentiment behind it for sure.
Right. So speaking of expansion, are there any plans to, or can you use in-ear monitoring with this platform?
This is a wireless microphone receiver that works specifically with Axient Digital transmitters, which are wireless microphone transmitters, and ULX-D wireless microphone transmitters. So quite simply, no.
All right. My goodness, we have so many questions. Hold on. Let me catch up to where I was. Okay. Does HD mode lock all channels into HD, or can some channels be standard and some be HD?
Yeah, so I think we just covered that with the last question, sort of. We covered the modes, right? We said that ULX-D and Axient Digital can't be used at the same time, and the same applies for the mode. So think of it this way: when the box boots up, it boots up with a particular profile in mind. Am I an Axient Digital HD? Am I an Axient Digital Standard? Am I a ULX-D HD? Am I a ULX-D Standard? It boots up one of those images, so it won't use multiple at the same time.
Okay. With the release of ULX-D wideband, will the ULX-D narrowband products be phased out and discontinued?
Yeah, so I don't think we're announcing anything officially right now. Our product line sort of is what it is at this point. We have a variety of different transmitters in the ULX-D family that we're still offering today.
Okay. This one's a little far afield. I'm not sure if we can answer it in this group. Is there channel expansion for the ADTQ Axient Digital PSM?
There is. I can talk all about that.
Great.
And Rod, maybe you want to cover that.
Yes, is the short version. So the ADPSM comes as two versions: the 2-channel and the 4-channel, the Duo and the Quad. The Duo can be upgraded to a maximum of 8, and the Quad to a maximum of 16. Obviously, it's AD-PSM, so it's only Axient Digital. We're not talking ULX-D at this time. But the purchase process and the license activation process, the device claiming process, transferring of licenses is all identical between ANX4 and AD-PSM.
Okay.
I will add to that there is each of those transmitters has a specific RF power output that it's capable of doing. And so that power output is shared across the channels that are licensed to that box. So the more channels you add to that, the more power gets distributed between those channels. And so you will see some of that RF output drop per channel when you add more channel licenses with the Axient Digital. So you just have to take that into mind on what your specific needs are for your environment. Just keep that in mind.
Okay. We've still got a ton of questions, so I'm probably going to narrow in a little bit. And if there's anything not specifically related to ANX4, I'm going to focus on today's topic for questions. If you're planning to use ULX-D transmitters, is there any benefit to ANX4 apart from future-proofing for upgrades to Axient transmitters?
Oh yeah, lots of benefits. Using multiple different bands in one piece of hardware is one. Another one is stuffing all 24 channels into a single rack space and having one Dante out. Those are the two biggest that I can think of. Yeah. Your tuning range doesn't necessarily get any wider because it's limited by the capabilities of the transmitter, but it's ×2 now, right? So if you could support two different transmitter ranges, then you could support double the transmitter bandwidth in one ULX-D receiver, or one ANX4 rather.
Here's an interesting question. Are there plans to have a mirror mode to pair ANX4 to offer redundancy or failover and provide backup and negate concerns for multi-channel RX in one unit?
Well, good news.
There's multiple questions on redundancy.
There's
multiple questions on this one.
You want to talk about redundancy mode a little bit, Paul?
Oh, no, I'll let you handle that one.
Okay. All right. So I just think of you right away because we just added it to our training module. But yes, redundancy is a feature that came out in a recent firmware release, not our day 0 or launch release, but our just after launch release. So if you have an ANX4 and you haven't updated the firmware, you'll find redundancy mode in this new release. And what it will do is it basically does what the questioner described, which is it basically mirrors a primary device. So you set up a redundant device. It has to have its own channel licenses. It doesn't share the licenses with the primary device. And if it's configured with the same number of channels as its primary, it will essentially copy the names, copy the frequencies, and in the event of a catastrophic failure, like say you lose power on the first ANX4, and you have your second ANX4 on a DC backup, that second ANX4 will fail over. You will have to do routes on your mixer, right? Because they're going to be on separate Dante routes. So there is a little bit of manual configuration. We're not automatically switching routes in your desk and everything else. But it's a real easy way to have a backup ANX4 I like that phrase, to mirror the primary device.
Great. Okay. Is slot per channel still used for Axient, and can this option be included in ULX-D on the ANX4?
No. So the slots do exist. I should have answered that differently. Yes, there are slots in Axient Digital, just like there in the ANX4, just like there is in the 84. So if you're used to that 8 slots per transmitter, that's a capability that exists in the ANX4. But if you're using ULX-D, because we don't have ShureLink, because we don't manage the other frequencies and in that list, in that transmitter slot list, without having ShureLink, it's not a feature that's included. So I think that answers the question. If you're talking about the transmitter slots that you use with Axient Digital, those for technical capability reasons aren't supported in ULX-D mode.
Okay.
But think of it this way. Anything that you can do with the few exceptions we've highlighted with 84, you can do with ULX-D. And that it includes things like that. If you're a ULX-D user, you don't get the transmitter slots. If you're an Axient Digital user, you do.
Okay. What if you forget to remove the license from a device after use?
Plug it back into the internet and remove the device. Would be the honest, it's so when that device goes offline, it obviously takes those channels with it, and it's got those channels for as long as you're offline. That would be the ultimate safety, incidentally, from having somebody else reprogram your ANX4 at an inopportune moment, is just take it offline. So yeah, if you meant to remove the licenses from the device, put it back online, remove them. then you're good.
Okay. Does this license fluidity mean that you can move licenses between units based on need? So if one device in not Boston needs 8 or has 8 but needs 4, and the same time a device in San Fran needs 8 and only has 4, can the licenses be moved around?
Great question, and it's an advantage to ANX4 that we hadn't touched on up to this point. Yes. So if you need them in New York this morning and you need them in LA this afternoon, just remove them from the one in New York and stick them on the one in LA, and you're saving yourself that freight cost of trying to ship a receiver right across America. Yes, that is the whole point behind making those licenses transferable between units.
Fantastic.
But it will, removing those licenses will reboot that device. Right. So whenever you move those licenses, you want to make sure that that device is not currently being in use. Is not in use at the time.
Good point.
Good point. Okay. Can we touch on any of the new thermal and cooling needs in the rack configuration when the ANX4 is in max licenses and channels? Do internal cooling fans scale up based on workload placed on the chips? And how loud are the cooling fans?
We do have specs on the fan that we haven't actually published yet. And so I'll just tell you anecdotally, I don't think they're incredibly loud. If you're familiar with the 8600, we use a very similar RF board design and mechanical design and thermal layout. So if you've used 8600, it's a similar experience. When you first turn on the receiver, the fans go full blast for like 15 seconds. And then they normalize and typically remain off until the receiver gets at a really hot temperature. Now, I haven't really noticed myself a difference or have heard anything from our users about them saying that the thermal load changes depending purely on how many transmitters they're using. There are probably other factors involved as well that have to do with like the overall utilization of like the FPGA and the processor inside. Sure, maybe operating 24 channels is one of them, but the product was designed to operate exactly in that fashion, to 4 channels at max power. With a relatively not obnoxiously loud sounding fan. Can you hear the fan? Like, absolutely. It's not whisper quiet because it needs to do its job. But it doesn't have like a whine or a, because that's something that we've taken. We haven't always done that in our designs over the 25 years I've been at Shure, but we've learned a lot through those experiences, and I feel like we've done the best job possible is like acoustically dampening the fan noise. It's not an issue for me. I have one actually right behind me right now in that rack.
All right. Here's an interesting question. Taking into account what we just witnessed with AWS in the last 48 hours, will there ever be an offline license management tool?
Sorry, I was just going to say, sorry about the AWS issues yesterday, and we won't talk about any new capabilities that we have planned. But Rod can probably tell you a little bit more about the current capabilities.
I was actually going to mimic your answer, and that is no, we don't talk to our roadmap, but we do recognize that it may well be a need. So, yeah.
Okay. Does failover mode work with encryption enabled?
No, in fact, that's a good question. The encryption will be copied over from device to device from primary to redundant, if that's the question. But there are some cases when you will have to resync a transmitter to the new receiver. For example, if you're using ShoLink, so the keys themselves we can copy over. So that will keep you safe in a failover scenario. But I think the larger question is, are there scenarios when you might have to resync a transmitter after a redundant device takes over? And if you're using an Axient Digital using ShoLink, you will. So purely for the encryption keys, no, but for other cases, yes.
Okay. If I factory reset the ANX4, the licenses stay on the device? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Do you use functionality if you use an AXT Spectrum Manager versus the AD Spectrum Manager? I think they meant to ask you lose functionality.
Meaning the AXT 600?
I believe so, yes.
Let me see. I don't know if AXT 600 even supports ANX4. Okay. Let's keep that in the background, and I'll look that up.
All right. Is there a process to remove licenses from a device hit by a power spike and thus dead?
So that is the one scenario. If you manage to drop your ANX4 from 3 stories up, and now the device is broken, it takes the channels with it. You will need to go to Shure.com and contact Shure. We can recover those licenses for you. You haven't lost them entirely, but with a broken device, if it can't be plugged in a working fashion onto the internet, we're going to have to do that for you.
Okay. So all is not lost, but you'll have to reach out to us.
You will have to reach out to us. Yeah.
Great. Okay. When scanning with Wireless Workbench, can you partition the ANX4 to scan in multiple subdivisions of the bands at the same time, or can it only do one for the AB antenna feeds and one for the CD antenna feeds?
Do you want to cover that one, Paul? You want me to cover it?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
I was trying to think of how to phrase that. So
yeah. So there are lots of different ways that you can do a scan on an ANX4. I think the most easiest ways, if you're using Wireless Workbench, you can use it to scan, and it will scan for whatever bandwidth it's configured for. So in that case, it would configure for AB and CD at the same time. But let's say you are using the device itself to do a coordination. In that case, you would go to the channel menus, and you would either use the group scan or the channel scan menus. And those only coordinate for devices in their own range. So you would be doing separate coordination for, like the example I had, the G57 and X55 transmitters. Which makes sense, right? Because each radio is only configured to that specific bandwidth.
Okay. Well, I think that just about wraps up the questions, and we are just at time now. So if you have a question that we somehow missed or that pops into your head, you can always go to Shure.com/contact and fill out a form there. You can ask any question about the ANX4 or across any other Shure products or audio questions, and we have a fantastic group of application support engineers that can answer those questions. So Shure.com/contact. As I mentioned, this webinar will be available for on-demand viewing in about a week or so at Shure.com/webinars, and we will email all of the registrants with that link once it is available. I want to thank all my panelists for joining us. We've got some exciting things happening here, and this is such an exciting, scalable, wonderful product. So great work, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.